Hello and welcome. Um, you've seen the title, you know why we're here. I have somehow, I don't know how this happened, but in almost 30 years of being an avid reader, I have never read Agatha Christie. I don't know. I like mysteries. I read a lot of modern mysteries and from the last 20 years, mysteries are chill. Always meant to read Agatha Christie, never have. Haven't ever seen a movie based on her books, and I know there have been several recently. I just have zero experience with Agatha Christie, the author. So, I figured that since I do actually have to read some of her books, I own, a stag. I am not at a loss for Agatha Christie to read. I also picked up a lot of these cute little vintage editions, just randomly at a thrift store. I don't know if these are popular or not. These are just random books to me because I have no idea anything about Agatha Christie. So we're gonna read some Agatha Christie. Um, I'm especially the first one, which I've picked at random. They do it with mirrors, but considering what a prolific author she was and what variety she has, I feel like it's a bit unfair to just read one and have that be the experience. So I'm going to read several. I don't know which ones. I have a lot. I'm starting with They Do It With Mirrors, and we'll see where we go from here. And hopefully I like her because I've got 8 of her books. So I'm 50 pages in, which is not that much, but considering this book just barely hits 200, is kind of a decent percentage of the way through. I'm not enjoying it because it is kind of cool. I'm kind of down. This is a Miss Marple book, which I hadn't realized going in. Have heard lots about Miss Marple and Hercule Poirot, so was excited to see a Miss Marple book. And I kind of like her, and I kind of like her investigating, and she's very shrewd. She seems like a lovely person, but she is very just oh sure, I'll lie in this situation because that's for the benefit. That makes sense. Lying's fun, and she's doing it for the benefit of everyone, She's not lying to be vindictive or anything. She seems very lovely, but it is just she's very pragmatic, which is an interesting juxtaposition with her just loveliness and all. But I think one thing I am struggling with is this book feels very forced. Especially there was one scene, she just got to the place, and basically she went out and sat in the garden on her second day there, and literally every character just randomly came up to her alone and confessed something to her, or told her their deepest darkest fears or whatever, something very personal, and then we're oh, I don't normally tell people that. Well, I'll see you later, bye. And then the next person would just come up and do the same thing, and it was very it was a lot. It was a choice. So I do like it. It's very cozy and cute and fun, but I don't know, it's not really much more than that at this point. So I'm curious where it goes. I haven't got to any murder nonsense going on. It's just kind of Miss Marple's visiting a friend and maybe has some concerns, but it might be fine. I'm assuming it's not fine. So we'll see. I'm interested to see where it goes from here. I have finished They Do It With Mirrors, so huzzah, we've accomplished things. Mixed feelings on this one. I give it 3 stars. Here's the thing, I like Miss Marple as a character, as a cozy mystery protagonist, because she really hits the right vibe of, she's this funny, pragmatic old woman, but also really interesting and smart, and also still just a sweet little old lady, that's who she is. And it's really, I'm getting a phone call, I'm just trying to ignore it and keep filming. It's really interrupting my concentration. It's nice, I don't think the plot of this was really anything spectacular. It didn't really do much for me. It wasn't bad, it was just fine. I don't know, it's not one that I will remember. I'm already kind of forgetting it, to be honest, but you don't really read these types of books for the plot. I don't. anyway. Other than that, like, it was fine. Like, it's just a cozy mystery. It's a well done cozy mystery. Like, I see why people enjoy Agatha Christie. However, for me, the reason that I read cozy mysteries, like, what I get out of them is the good vibes, you know? They just give you, like, that good, like, cozy, happy feeling of enjoyment. And, like, you're not gonna think too hard about it. You're not really trying to solve the mystery most of the time. You're just kind of, like, along for the ride, kind of smiling, kind of having fun. And it's not that Agatha Christie couldn't create that, because she could, and she did. It's just that the fastest thing to ruin those good vibes is just to drop the N word out of nowhere. And it's just like, okay, good vibe ruined, and I'm no longer enjoying the good vibes of this book, like, which is the point for me. Like, and it wasn't just that. Like, it wasn't just like one instance. It was like kind of the racism and the classism and the sexism, and I'm sure there was other prejudice. Just like the prejudice throughout this book was kind of like constantly present, like always there, always coming from different characters, sometimes coming from the narrative, sometimes it was criticized, but generally not. Generally it was just kind of like accepted through the narration. And it's like that completely ruins the vibe. It completely ruins the reason that I like books like this. And I totally understand that there is a valid... Now I have a voicemail. I don't like when people leave voicemails, because that usually means that I should have answered the phone, but oh well. I've completely lost my train of thought once again. I just find it unpleasant, and it ruins the entire purpose of reading a cozy mystery for me, like 100%. It's not that she didn't do things well, it's just that I can't get past that in a book like this, because there is, like, this was published 70 years ago, and there's an argument to be made that it is a product of its time and you should read it as such, and like, not to not be bothered by the prejudice in this book, but like, it was of its time. Like, you can't judge someone 100 years ago by the standards of today, which I understand. And like, I do read older books, and I do read books where you have to contend with that. And it's like, sometimes I can and sometimes I can't, depending on the book. And it's just like, for this kind of book I can't, because it's about the good vibes for me. Like, it's just about like having a relaxed, enjoyable, cozy reading time. And I'm feeling like I would much rather read a contemporary where I don't have to contend with that level of racism and prejudice of all kinds. Like, I'm gonna read more of her books. I'm going to at least like read the ones I have on my shelf, because I think she was a good writer. But just for me, like, and I don't know, this might change in later books, because again, I've read solely this one right now, but I would like to read a contemporary, because it'll give me the cozy vibes that I enjoy, but also not the prejudice. So, we're gonna see. I'm going to read... I really did like Miss Marple. This is unfortunately the only Miss Marple book I own, so I'm going to move on to a Hercule Poirot book, because he is the other big detective that she has. And then for this video, I'll probably end after 3. I don't know that I can read 3 of these in quick succession, or read more than 3 of these in quick succession. So I have some standalones, and then I have like the Tommy and Tuppence series. So I'll pick one of those. But I'm going to go with Hercule Poirot next. I have Curtain and Murder on the Orient Express, so I will be reading one of those and see if my feelings change. I am finally back with an update. It's been over a month since I read They Do It With Mirrors, and I just really wasn't looking forward to getting into another Agatha Christie, but I have finally picked up Murder on the Orient Express. I chose this one largely because Pizza Stained Pages commented on another one of my videos and said this was her favorite, and she highly recommended it, and I was like, I've got that one, so I may as well read it. So I'm working my way through this. I'm like a bit over 50 pages in. We've like just gotten to the actual mystery part. Like, everything I've read so far is just set up for the mystery. Like, here's who we have, here are the suspects, here are the characters, like here's what Poirot is doing, because this is a Poirot mystery. And so far, I'm kind of unimpressed. Like, I don't want to say it's bad, but it is like a lot of setup, and it's very dry, it's very dull, it's a lot of details, just like tons of details, and I'm not super enjoying it. But I hope once I get through like more into like the actual like mystery and investigating and whatever, I'll like it more. It's just like, I'm not loving Poirot. I really liked Miss Marple. She was the saving grace for me, and They Do It With Mirrors. I really loved her character. I really loved like what she did in the story, and like how she was perceived, and like how that affected the story itself, and like that was like the main thing I enjoyed about it. And this is kind of just like, oh, we have this dude who's like, I don't know, kind of annoying, kind of pretentious. I don't know. We'll see. This is my first Poirot, so we'll see how he does in the actual like investigatory aspect of the story, and hopefully it gets better for me. I finished Murder on the Orient Express. Did mean to film an update in there somewhere, but it kind of just went by so fast that like by the time I had a chance to update, I was like 50 pages from the end, and it was like, I might as well just finish it and update at the end, because it's not like my thoughts are going to change in the last 50 pages. 3 stars once again. I don't get it. I don't think I get Agatha Christie. This is a terrible story. Like, someone like tell me I'm wrong here. This is a terrible story. The character development is awful. They're non-existent, really. The narrative is, again, basically not there. Like, there's a murder that happened. That's it. This is a logic puzzle, which, I mean, like, no shade. I like a good logic puzzle, which is, I did enjoy reading this, like, because I like logic puzzles, and it's just like you're following along, figuring out the case. But like, again, like I said before, with the racism and the classism and the xenophobia and, you know, etc., etc., it makes it kind of unpleasant to read. It's just like, even if I am enjoying it, I'd rather just read a modern day one that doesn't have a bunch of prejudice. Like, I get that it's a historical setting, like, you can make that argument that, like, Agatha Christie lived, like, 70 years ago or something, and was writing these books, and it's like, you know, her views are not what we would have today, but like, it's just, it makes it not a fun time, and I want these to be a fun time. And then beyond that, it's just like, the characters are non-existent. Like, Poirot is smug and annoying and just like the worst human being. Like, I don't like him. And then the actual like story is just beyond absurd, and I mean, I did like it. I like following along with the logic puzzle aspect, but even then, it's like, there was information that Poirot got that I, the reader, did not receive, and it was just like, if I'm reading this as a logic puzzle, then I want that information. Like, I mean, the easy example for that, and I'm not saying this information was like necessary to solve the case, but it was like information that was pointed out that Poirot then got that I didn't. Like, they made a comment about like the murder happening with like, one was left-handed, one was right-handed, and he's specifically had every person on the train write down their address so that he would know if they were right-handed or left-handed, but then that information was never shared. And I'm not saying it was super relevant information, I'm just saying that, like, reading this, I would also like to have that information. But it was fine. Like, if you like logic puzzles, I would recommend this. If you like a mystery that's just like written in the form of a logic puzzle. If you want character development and story, not so much, because it was non-existent. Like, I don't understand why this is beloved. Like, I had a fun time reading it. It was not like a waste of time or anything, but like, it wasn't great. I don't know. I just think I don't get Agatha Christie. But for this video, I'm gonna read 2 more of her books, because I was like, I need to decide if I'm gonna read the Tommy and Tuppence series or one of her standalones, and I was like, let's read both. And then by doing that, I can have read her 2 most famous books, and then 2 random books that I'd never heard of before. So I have And Then There Were None, which I'm like 95% sure is a standalone, but I'm reading it. And then By the Pricking of My Thumbs, which have not heard of, but this is a Tommy and Tuppence series, so I'm thinking it'll be good to like hit on everything. Like I got Miss Marple, I got Perot, now I'll get Tommy and Tuppence. I know this is lesser known than the other two, but like still, you know, I'm trying to like give myself a good grasp of her. And this I kind of figure is going to be very, very similar to Murder on the Orient Express, just in terms of like the mystery, the storytelling, the narrative. So I'm not gonna read this next. I'm gonna go with By the Pricking of My Thumbs, and hopefully I will enjoy this in a way that I haven't enjoyed her thus far. I've gotten about halfway through By the Pricking of My Thumbs, and so far I'm not loving it. Like, it's mostly about Tuppence. It's a Tommy and Tuppence book, but it very much seems like Tuppence is the main character and Tommy's kind of her sidekick. I don't know if this is like how all the books are, just this one, but I do like her, and it's like the mystery itself seems cool and I'm down to like solve it. But I've just found it so dull so far, and like I haven't been interested in it. I haven't been wanting to read it, and it's like I don't know. I'm kind of just like I've been forcing myself to read it. But I just finished the second book. There are like 4 books or like parts, you know, in this. So I finished the second part. There are 2 to go. And something very exciting just happened, so I'm hoping that like it gets better, maybe. We'll see. Because it's like I don't dislike a lot about this. I'm just finding it dull and hard to focus, and I keep like checking my phone or like doom scrolling on Instagram because it's more enjoyable than reading it. And it took me like half the day to get, you know, 130 pages into this little book that is not a difficult read. It's just like I just haven't been able to like get invested. But I do like Tommy and Tuppence, and I like them as characters a lot more than Perot. So I'm hoping that like now that some drama has happened and it's like amping up quite a bit, I'm hoping maybe it'll get better. Maybe I'll be like super down for the second half of this. I finished By the Pricking of My Thumbs, and again, every time I start to film, Spleen's like, let's play with my loudest toy. Let's play with my loudest toy. And so she is. Thank you, babe. You're not helping. I enjoyed the second half of this quite a bit. Like, the second half of this was maybe my favorite of all the Agatha Christie I've read so far. I gave the book 3 stars overall because the first half was like very slow and dull to me. Like, I definitely struggled keeping my focus and keeping interested, but the second half was really fun and exciting, and I like Tommy and Tuppence quite a bit. Like, they're fun characters, especially Tuppence. Like, I enjoy following them. I enjoy the shenanigans they get up to. And I felt like the story of this book was one of the more interesting that I've read of the 2 I've read so far. Of the 3, this is by far the most interesting. It was actually complex. The characters actually had a little bit of development. Like, not the most, but like compared to her other books, they were actually people or attempts of people. So yeah, this might be my favorite so far. I don't know. It's between this and They Do It With Mirrors, but I like Tommy and Tuppence. I have another one of those books, so I'm not gonna hate reading that. I'm not dreading that the way I am dreading my other Perot books. I don't want Perot. But I don't know. This was fun. This was quite enjoyable and quite an interesting mystery, and I'm actually glad I read it for once. I think this might be the first Agatha Christie I read where I walked away like, yeah, I'm glad I read that one. So yeah, this was, I guess, the best victory so far. I only gave it 3 stars, but still, like, I had a good time, and now I have to go on to And Then There Were None, which I'm really not particularly looking forward to, but you know, maybe it'll surprise me. Reading And Then There Were None. I made good progress. This one's going by really quick, which is probably because I'm enjoying it more than I've enjoyed any of her other books so far. It was really easy to get into. Like, I was interested from the beginning. Like, I'm down for the story. I don't know. This one is a fun ride. It's definitely got a lot of prejudice in like a variety of ways, which is a joy to read. But like, I like the story. I like the characters okay, but I still think it's more like they have characteristics than actual personalities, which I feel like has been true for all of her books so far. I haven't really enjoyed that aspect of them. Like, none of them feel like real people, like main characters or side characters. But I don't know. And there is like a lot of time spent explaining very, very obvious things. They're like, let's sit down and talk about this very obvious thing that has happened. And it's like, I get it. We don't need to spend 3 pages discussing that. Like, we can move on. Like, this could be a shorter book and not lose anything. It's just like very over explanatory. But I'm having a good time. Like, it is thus far my favorite. We'll see how it ends, but I'm enjoying this more than I have any of the others. Like, not excessively more, but like, I'm definitely having a much better time with this, and I'm not having to force myself to read it. I'm just kind of enjoying the ride. I finished, and then there were none, so this concludes my Agatha Christie project. 3 stars, once again. I feel kind of weird about the fact that I've given literally all of these books 3 stars, but there we go. This was by far my favorite of the lot. This was the only one that I was like immediately invested in and kind of like curious about throughout the whole story, which is kind of what I want from a book like this. Again, lots of prejudice. And there was just so much time spent explaining things in this book. And like, not just at the end, because I get that these books are logic puzzles to a certain degree. Like, they're less mystery and more puzzle, which is fine. I like puzzles. That's fun to me. So like, I expect like that long-winded kind of answer at the end, but it did that throughout the book where like people would just sit and like explain very basic concepts that were happening in the book, and it was like, my dudes, I get it. Like, and the characters are still not great. Like, I felt that way about all of her books. Even like the characters I enjoyed were very like simplistic ideas of people rather than actual people. So that was kind of annoying, but this one was compelling. Like, this one kind of made me get what people see in Agatha Christie and why they love her, even if I didn't, because the other 3 books I read were kind of like, like, this isn't bad, but it's not like good either. I don't know, I don't have a whole lot to say because I've already like discussed all the details in these books, and it's like, this one is kind of the same. Like, I felt like the puzzle of this was actually really cool. Like, you could actually put together all the pieces and like figure it out, and then you got the answer at the end of the puzzle that was just like explaining every detail. It was a little bit over explanatory. I think everything in this book kind of was. Like, it needed to dial that back a bit, and it could have been shorter, or it could have taken that time to like expand on the characters and like fully develop them as people. That would have been cool. Like, that's really the thing that would have made me enjoy her books a lot more, is if the characters were people instead of like a collection of traits. But yes, so I figure I'll rate them or rank them. I gave them all 3 stars, but I do have preferences. So obviously, and then there were none was my favorite. This is the only one I would recommend, and so far this is the only one I'm keeping. I'm gonna unhaul the rest just because like they're kind of mediocre to me. Like, I don't know, I enjoyed this one, like a enjoyable 3-star read. And my second favorite was They Do It With Mirrors, solely because of Miss Marple. I really liked Miss Marple. She was a cool lady. I would be down to read more Miss Marple books to see if maybe I like other Miss Marple books more than this one, because this one's kind of like fine, enjoyable for her. The story itself was kind of like and then we get By the Pricking of My Thumbs, which is the Tommy and Tuppence book that I read. Enjoyable, fun time. I liked the story of this. It had a really cool like mystery and like plot, so I was down. But it was very dry to get through in the first half. But the second half was probably the best Agatha Christie that I've read so far. Just like, worst first half, best second half. So towards the bottom here. And then finally, Murder on the Orient Express. I don't like Poirot. This has very much made me not like Poirot. Yeah, I just don't get the appeal of him because he's not enjoyable to read, and he's very smug and annoying and unpleasant, so I don't know. So these were the 4 Agatha Christie books I read. to be honest, I'm very relieved to be done with this, because I was really expecting this to be a more enjoyable, exciting experience, and then it kind of turned into, I don't like Agatha Christie, which I wasn't expecting. I tried. I gave it my best shot. I will be reading the other Agatha Christie books I own just to like read them, and I will probably also try another Miss Marple because I don't own any other Miss Marples, and I would like to try more from her perhaps. But I feel like in general Agatha Christie is not going to be an author that I reach for, you know, when I'm craving a cozy mystery. Like, I don't know, I found a lot of her sections of her stories dry and kind of boring, and I don't like the characters. I felt that way in all of her books. The characters just don't have like fully fledged personalities. Like, I don't think there was any character I read. Miss Marple herself was probably the closest to having like a full personality, and it's just like they're collections of traits, you know, like you get like traits, like a list of traits that people have, but like it doesn't add up to actually being a person, you know. And that was very frustrating to me, and it made it really hard for me to like get super invested in her books. They're fun puzzles, I'll give it that. I will say most of them, apart from They Do It With Mirrors, actually, were really fun puzzles that were super fun to put together. Like, I really enjoyed And Then There Were None for that aspect. It's just like, if I want to like do a logic puzzle thing, I'll do something that's a lot like shorter and more succinct. I'm not going to read a whole book for that. But it was fun. I will say I tried to read a variety. I read her 2 most popular books. I read 2 not very popular books. I read a standalone, a Perrault, a Miss Marple, and a Tommy and Tuppence. Like, I tried to get a full variety of Agatha Christie in here. So, but that being said, let me know if I have somehow picked like bad books, or if there are any specific books that you think I might enjoy more than these, especially if it's a Miss Marple book, because I don't really know where They Do It With Mirrors stands in terms of like Miss Marple's books. But she was like by far my favorite character that I enjoyed following. So I don't know, let me know if I've somehow read 4 books that are all completely different and failed to find like the good Agatha Christie, because I'd be down to try a little bit more. Maybe not for a while, but like eventually, perhaps. But I just feel like these aren't gonna be books that I gravitate towards. They're not books that I love, unfortunately, because I really did want to, expect to, I tried to. I don't know. I just think maybe Agatha Christie is not for me, which makes this video a lot more of a downer than I intended, unfortunately. But let me know down below if you've read Agatha Christie, which you probably have, what you thought of her, what you thought of the 4 books that I specifically read in this. If I have erred in my choosing of these books, I don't know. But yeah, talk to me in the comments, and I will see y'all again soon.